Support matters. With 90% of our viewers yet to subscribe, we need your help to keep creating engaging content. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Let us know where you're watching from. Leave your city in the comments below.
Lucas Bennett was a man who prided himself on his practicality. At 33, he was one of 4 partners in a thriving plumbing business, a husband to Elena, and a father to their 8-year-old daughter, Maria. Life was stable, predictable, and comfortable, or so it seemed. But beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect life, cracks were beginning to form, invisible to the naked eye but felt in the quiet moments between them. Elena, a stunning 32-year-old, was often regarded as a trophy wife. She worked as a secretary at the local BMW dealership, a job she took more out of necessity than passion. Her beauty was undeniable, but it was her charm that truly captivated people. She had a way of making everyone feel special, a trait that Lucas had once found endearing but now found unsettling. Their marriage, while not without its ups and downs, had settled into a routine that Lucas found comforting. But Elena's past was a shadow that loomed over their relationship, a past that included a broken engagement to a man named Ryan Grant, infamously known as Bum Blasted. Ryan was a notorious womanizer, a man who had once been engaged to Elena but had betrayed her trust in the most public and humiliating way possible. Their relationship had ended when Ryan was caught sleeping with a married woman, resulting in a shotgun blast to his backside, a story that had become local legend. Despite the humiliation, Ryan had never truly let go of Elena, and Lucas had always sensed that his wife's past with Ryan was a wound that had never fully healed. One evening, after a long day at work, Lucas came home to find Elena setting the table for dinner. Maria was in her room, engrossed in a cartoon, leaving the two of them alone. The air felt heavy, charged with an unspoken tension. "Smells good," Lucas said, forcing a smile as he hung his coat by the door. Elena glanced up, her eyes briefly meeting his before she looked away. "It's just pasta. Nothing fancy." Lucas sat down at the table, his stomach growling but his appetite dampened by the unease in the room. He watched as Elena stirred the sauce, her movements mechanical, her mind clearly elsewhere. "Everything okay?" he asked, breaking the silence. Elena hesitated, her hand gripping the wooden spoon tightly. "I got a call today," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucas felt a knot form in his stomach. "From who?" "Ryan." The name hung in the air like a storm cloud, dark and foreboding. Lucas clenched his fists under the table, his mind racing. What did he want? Elena turned to face him, her expression a mix of guilt and defiance. "He's in town. He wanted to meet up, just to catch up." Lucas's jaw tightened. "Catch up? After everything he's done? After everything he put you through?" Elena's eyes flashed with anger. "It's not like that, Lucas. It's been years. People change. Do they?" Lucas shot back, his voice rising. "Because from where I'm standing, Ryan hasn't changed a damn bit. He's still the same selfish, manipulative bastard he always was." Elena slammed the spoon down on the counter, the sound echoing through the kitchen. "You don't get to decide who I can and can't talk to, Lucas. I'm not your property." Lucas stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "I'm not trying to control you, Elena. I'm trying to protect you. Protect us. Ryan doesn't just want to catch up. He wants to ruin what we have, just like he ruins everything else he touches." Elena crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing. "You don't trust me, do you?" "It's not about trust," Lucas said, his voice trembling with emotion. "It's about respect. If you go meet him, you're disrespecting our marriage, and I won't stand for it." Elena's face softened, and for a moment, Lucas thought she might relent. But then she straightened her shoulders, her resolve hardening. "I'm going, Lucas. Whether you like it or not." The words hit Lucas like a punch to the gut. He felt a surge of anger, but beneath it was something deeper, something more painful, fear. Fear that he was losing her, that the life they had built together was crumbling before his eyes. "Fine," he said, his voice cold. "But don't expect me to be here when you get back." Elena's eyes widened, but she said nothing. The silence between them was deafening, a chasm that neither of them knew how to cross. That night, Lucas lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. He could hear Elena in the bathroom, the sound of running water doing little to drown out the thoughts swirling in his head. When she finally climbed into bed beside him, the space between them felt like miles. Lucas turned to face her, his heart aching with a mixture of love and despair. "Elena," he whispered, his voice breaking. Please don't do this. Elena turned to look at him, her eyes filled with tears. I have to, Lucas. I need to know. Know what? If I made the right choice. If I chose the right man. Lucas felt as though the ground had been ripped out from under him. You're my wife, Elena. You made a vow to me. To us. Elena reached out, her hand trembling as she brushed a strand of hair from his face. I know. And I love you, Lucas. I do. But I need to close this chapter of my life. For good. Lucas grabbed her hand, holding it tightly. Then let me come with you. Let's face him together. Elena shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I can't. This is something I need to do alone. Lucas felt a lump form in his throat. And what if you realize you made the wrong choice? What if you decide you want him instead of me? Elena didn't answer. She simply turned away, her silence speaking volumes. The living room was bathed in the soft glow of the television, the weather forecaster's voice a distant hum in the background. Lucas sat on the couch, his feet propped up on the coffee table, a half-empty beer bottle in his hand. Elena was curled up beside him, her legs tucked under her, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing patterns on the armrest. The room felt warm, familiar, but there was a tension in the air that neither of them could ignore. Elena had been quiet all evening, her mind clearly elsewhere. Lucas had noticed but hadn't pushed. He knew better than to pry when she was in one of her moods. But when she turned to him, her expression serious, he felt a knot form in his stomach. Lucas, she began, her voice trembling slightly. I need to tell you something important. Lucas muted the TV, the sudden silence amplifying the weight of her words. He turned to face her, his brow furrowed. What is it? Elena hesitated, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. She took a deep breath, as if steeling herself for what came next. Ryan contacted me. The name hit Lucas like a punch to the gut. He sat up straighter, his beer forgotten on the table. Ryan? As in Ryan Grant? Bum-blasted Ryan. Elena nodded, her eyes avoiding his. He's invited me to Ischia for a week. His wife can't make it, but he thought it would be a chance for us to catch up. Lucas felt a cold chill run down his spine. Catch up? Are you serious? You know what that man is capable of. He's not inviting you to Ischia for a friendly chat. Elena's face flushed, a mix of guilt and defiance flashing in her eyes. It's not like that, Lucas. He just wants to reminisce about old times. It's a free trip to one of the most luxurious resorts in the world. How could I say no? Lucas's anger boiled over, his voice rising. You're out of your mind if you think this is just about a free vacation. Ryan has always wanted you, and he's not going to let this opportunity slip by. If you go, you're playing right into his hands. Elena's eyes welled up with tears, but her voice was steady. You don't trust me, do you? It's not about trust, Elena. It's about respect. If you go on this trip, you're disrespecting our marriage, and I won't stand for it. Elena stood up abruptly, her hands clenched into fists. You don't get to tell me what to do, Lucas. I'm not your property. I'm your wife, and I deserve to make my own choices. Lucas stood too, his face inches from hers. And what about Maria? What about us? Do we not matter to you? Or is Ryan's invitation more important than your family? Elena's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. Of course you matter. But this isn't about choosing him over you. It's about closure, Lucas. I need to close this chapter of my life for good. Lucas shook his head, his voice low and bitter. Closure? You think spending a week in a luxury resort with Ryan Grant is going to give you closure? That's a lie, Elena, and you know it. Elena wiped her tears, her voice trembling but resolute. You don't understand. You've never understood what it was like for me back then. Ryan was my first love, Lucas. He hurt me, but he was also a part of who I am. I need to face him, to see if I've really moved on. Lucas felt a surge of desperation, his heart aching with a mix of love and fear. And what if you haven't? What if you realize you still have feelings for him? What happens to us then? Elena didn't answer. She simply looked at him, her eyes filled with a sadness that cut him to the core. That night, they slept in the same bed but miles apart. Lucas lay on his side, staring at the wall, his mind racing. He could hear Elena's quiet sobs, but he didn't reach out to comfort her. He couldn't. The betrayal he felt was too raw, too overwhelming. In the darkness, Elena's voice broke the silence. Lucas! He didn't respond. I love you, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I just need to do this. Please try to understand. Lucas closed his eyes, a single tear slipping down his cheek. I don't think I can, Elena. I really don't. The next morning, Lucas woke up to an empty bed. He found Elena in the kitchen, her suitcase by the door. She was dressed in a way that made his heart ache, a fitted dress, high heels, her hair styled to perfection. "You're really going," he said, his voice hollow. Elena nodded, avoiding his gaze. "I'll be back in a week." Lucas felt a surge of anger, but he pushed it down, replacing it with a cold resolve. "Don't bother." Elena's head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that if you walk out that door, don't expect to come back to a husband." Elena's face paled, but she didn't argue. She simply picked up her suitcase and walked out the door, leaving Lucas standing alone in the kitchen, his heart shattered into a million pieces. As Lucas watched Elena's car disappear down the street, he felt a strange mix of emotions, anger, sadness, but also a strange sense of relief. The cracks in their marriage had finally broken open, and now there was no going back. But little did he know, this was only the beginning. The storm was coming, and it would change everything. The tension in the house was suffocating. Lucas found himself lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every moment that had led them to this fracture. He had spent years believing that trust was the foundation of their marriage, but now, that foundation was crumbling beneath his feet. Elena remained defiant. "Lucas, you're overreacting," she insisted one evening, crossing her arms as she stood in the doorway of their bedroom. "Ryan and I have history, yes, but that's all it is, history." "History has a way of repeating itself, Elena," Lucas said quietly, his voice laced with exhaustion. "You expect me to believe that this is just some innocent reunion? That you're flying across the world for closure?" He let out a bitter laugh. "Closure happens in the past, not on a romantic island in the middle of the Mediterranean." Her jaw clenched. "I need to do this for me. And what about us? What about our daughter?" Elena hesitated, but she didn't back down. "I'll be gone for a few days, Lucas. Nothing is going to change." But everything had already changed. The final blow came unexpectedly. While washing Elena's car in the driveway, he noticed the glove compartment slightly ajar. A small folder peeked out. He hesitated before pulling it free, a strange weight settling in his chest. When he flipped it open, his breath caught. A printed email from Ryan. The subject line read, "Finalized itinerary, can't wait." His hands shook as he scanned the details. Flights, hotel reservations, a boat transfer, a premeditated escape. The air rushed from his lungs. He closed his eyes, gripping the folder like it was the last thing holding him to reality. His mind screamed for an explanation, but deep down he knew. His marriage was over. That night, Lucas made a call. "Abby, it's Lucas. We need to talk." Ryan's wife was silent for a moment before she exhaled sharply. What did he do now? By the time he finished, Abby was livid. "He's gone too far this time," she snapped. "He thinks he can just do whatever he wants. Well, he's in for a surprise. I'll be in Ischia as soon as I can. This ends now." Lucas didn't stop there. He wrote Elena a letter, one filled with the words he couldn't bring himself to say aloud. He laid it all out, the pain, the betrayal, the finality of his decision. Then, with a heavy heart, he faxed both the letter and the divorce papers to the hotel. She would have to face the consequences of her choices. With Elena gone, the house felt like an empty shell, but Lucas refused to drown in the emptiness. He booked a trip to Euro Disney for Maria, a promise he had made long ago but never had the chance to fulfill. Clara, their neighbor and a single mother, agreed to join them with her daughter. They had always been friendly, but there was something different about her now, a quiet strength that pulled him in. One evening, as they watched their daughters twirl in a parade of glowing lights, Clara turned to him. "You're handling all of this better than I expected." Lucas let out a dry chuckle. "You expected me to fall apart?" She smiled softly. "I expected you to need someone to lean on. And I want you to know, Lucas, I'm here." Her words stirred something deep within him, a warmth he hadn't felt in years. That night, as the kids slept, they sat on the hotel balcony, wine glasses between them. The conversation shifted from light-hearted to something heavier, unspoken emotions filling the space between them. "Do you think love can survive betrayal?" Lucas asked suddenly. Clara didn't answer right away. She looked at him, her gaze unwavering. "No," she said finally. "But I think love can be found after it." And in that moment he knew. Clara wasn't a replacement. She was something new, something real. Elena's return was anything but triumphant. The moment she stepped through the door, she knew. The distance between them was now an unbridgeable chasm. "Lucas, please," she whispered. "I made a mistake. I was confused." He met her gaze, calm but resolute. "No, Elena. You made a choice. And so did I." She fought back tears, but the truth was undeniable. Lucas had moved on. and she was left to pick up the pieces of a life she had shattered. Maria adjusted in time, bonding not only with her parents but with Clara's daughter. Their blended family wasn't perfect, but it was filled with warmth, something Lucas hadn't realized he had been missing for years. He and Clara planned their wedding with quiet certainty, their love strengthening with each challenge. When they decided to have a baby, it wasn't out of necessity, but out of a shared dream for the future. As Lucas stood on the beach, watching Maria and Clara's daughter build sandcastles, he thought about the road that had led him here. Deep thoughts. Clara's voice pulled him back to the present. She slid her hand into his, fingers lacing together effortlessly. Just thinking about how much things have changed. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Change isn't always bad. He exhaled, a sense of peace settling over him. No, it isn't. He had paid a heavy price for trusting Elena, but in the end, he had gained something far more precious. A love built on honesty, respect, and the unshakable belief that the right person would never make him question his worth. Because real love doesn't demand sacrifice. It simply exists unwavering. What would you have done in Lucas's shoes? Could you have forgiven Elena, or would you have made the same choice? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that delve into the complexities of love, trust, and redemption.